Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most spooky work 5 years on. Teleconferencing in is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back to talk about Breach 3.4.
Yeah.
We're still in the house. There's a crazy ritual spell going on, and we got no time skips. Blake's just still right as fucked as he was when we left 3.3.
Yeah, these two chapters definitely feel like parts 1 and 2 of the same sort of scene, I guess. But we opened the chapter with the steady talk of the diagram and blah blah blah. But like it just immediately sets this time pressure that carries out throughout the whole chapter. Like, this is such a tense chapter just because like Blake never has more than a few seconds till shit's gonna hit the fan next.
Yeah. Last chapter really was all about ramping up the intensity, and this chapter gives us that talk off the bat to really get us back into the into that same feeling.
Yeah.
Time has run out. So Blake starts kind of panicking, still disguised as a young Bahame boy, as the spell keeps progressing. He kind of desperately tries a few things. He annoys an adult Bahame who I think is the boy's parent into like showing him the spell's little instruction manual, I guess, to kind of appease him.
Yeah. I mean, this whole spell scene is like creepy as fuck. Like, everyone's chanting and they're saying a bunch of words which, according to some quick Google translating, are just the Arabic words for, the roles they were told they had, like crown and sword.
Yeah, crown, sword, yeah.
But it's just really creepy.
Yeah, and we get parts of what's going on because we see the pamphlet through Blake's eyes, but never enough to actually put it together, so it's very kind of mysterious. But it feels real because one of the things that Blake does see is some street names of the streets around the house. It's this really great way of like driving home, literally, that things are like really connected and like this isn't just a kind of abstract ritual. This is something that's directly gonna fuck with Blake right now.
Yeah, because we don't actually find out what the hell this thing is. Like, since it's Bahame's and Duchamp's teaming up, I'm assuming it's going to be some combo of either both or one of like time and connections, and I don't even know what that looks like, but it's scary and we don't understand it. All we know is that it is going to be affecting the house, essentially, is what you can... or at least the area around the house. So it's just... We don't actually figure out what it's doing. We just know that, just in case you had any doubts, this is going to be affecting Blake and Rose.
Yep. You pulled out a specific line that comes up in a little bit, which I like. Blake says, "I didn't want to stretch my luck, not with this much on the line. My well-being, the family," and then he kind of trails off.
Yeah, he sort of stops the thought short, which, I mean, this stood out to me just because it almost seems like he's worrying about his family, which is not something he's ever done before. Like, apart from Molly and Paige specifically, he's never given two shits what happens to his family as a whole.
Yeah.
And so obviously we find out later that the glamour is affecting him. And so, you could probably argue that maybe this is the 6-year-old boy in him coming out. If I want to put my tinfoil back on, I could bring back my Rose is merging with Blake theory and say it's her influence. But, I don't quite know why I think this line is here, but it definitely stood out to me. And this is another one I'm going to be keeping in mind as we go forward.
I think it makes sense that it's our first sign of the personality bleed, as it were, of this little boy that Blake is inhabiting. Inhabiting is not the right word. That he's being. I don't know.
Impostering? Is that the right?
Impostering.
Imposing?
Yeah. It's a fun thread. Blake is kind of, as Blake becomes more and more panicked throughout the ritual, you really do get the sense he's acting more and more like a scared little boy, basically.
Yeah, and in fact, on the second read-through, I did notice that in the first half of, or not the first half, but in the first chunk of the chapter, and especially in the end of the last one as well, Blake always mentions that he's acting like a little boy. Like, he's like, oh, I, said this obnoxiously loud to irritate people. And, like, I'm trying to act like a little boy. And then
Yeah.
even a little bit before we get the reveal, he stops doing that and it's all just natural. And I guess, that's your little clue that, it's not that he's just stopped thinking about trying. It's that he's not having to.
Yeah, he stops consciously. Yeah, trying, exactly. So the next thing he does is he basically tries to disrupt the ceremony a bit more. He kind of knocks one of the Bahame women into the circle to mess with the ceremony. It doesn't quite work. She gets caught before she falls in. People start throwing her and him dirty looks, and he kind of backs away before everyone gets suspicious of him.
Yeah, well, because there's another bit. He sort of talks about how big and strong the Duchamp woman who saves the Bahame woman is. And I wonder if this is another hint that he's seeing it through the lens of a 6-year-old. I mean, I guess she could just be a noteworthily big and strong woman. But, like, I'd like to think it's because
the word big, like, nobody calls people big except children.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like, I think it's probably more likely that this is because he's starting to think like a 6-year-old a bit.
Yeah. So Blake runs back to his old classic move and calls the cops on Laird, which is... I didn't realize until this read-through that this is just kind of his go-to when he's freaking out, like, oh, I better call the cops, which feels so weird when Laird is the chief of police and obviously didn't... In the way that Laird has dealt with the Molly stuff and how Laird kind of didn't even seem to be affected by the letter that was dropped off, it really seems like it's not a great strategy for Blake.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a counterintuitive strategy, like going after the chief of police by using the police. But, as we sort of see, he kind of goes 2 for 2. Like, I think it's implied that Laird was, sort of knocked off his axis a bit by the letter. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not, too drastically, but it's clearly sort of hurt him a little bit.
I think these are starting to add up.
Yeah.
People's suspicions are getting harder and harder to kind of smooth over as Blake keeps scoring points, as it were. Blake kind of is off hiding for this 911 call, and after he finishes it, Rose kind of points out, Blake, you're not acting like a little boy anymore. You're starting to kind of be a little boy. The glamour's starting to kind of infect you a bit with this reality-altering thing that makes you act more like a 6-year-old boy. So you really need to change back soon.
Yeah, and so not only does this like add the cool little element on that reread, but this ups the ante again because it's like he's sort of got the police coming, and so you're like, oh, okay, like police are going to come and that'll save him or something. And it's like now we've just got a different clock ticking because he's got his glamour clock is like the glamour is starting to corrode, I guess, or it's getting too strong. But it's like, this is just we've just immediately switched to a different timer.
Yeah.
I just had to pull out this line where Rose says, hey, you wanted a partnership? This is your partner telling you to get out. And Blake just immediately responds, I can't leave right away.
Which...
Classic partnership.
The old classic. Good job, Blake. Promising to pay attention and listen and run things by her and then just not actually doing it. Solid.
And I mean, because essentially, like, we do see after this, the police arrive and he spends the rest of the chapter just trying to get out. So she was bang on the money. He should have just gotten a head start.
Yeah, I don't know why he was sticking around, to be honest. But now we get into the part of the heist where Blake is, where it's really riding the line between things can go really badly or can succeed. And it's very tense up to the very end. Blake is basically trying to get a lift out of the party with the mother of the little boy's cousin, whose name is Leanne.
Yeah.
As his glamour gets more and more damaged and falls apart more and more.
Yeah, like he's deteriorating, he's starting not to be able to see well, and then, he rubs that off by revealing his real eyes, so it's like...
Yeah, oops.
It's all a problem. And I mean, because he does this really cool trick, like his auntie says, oh, I need to ask your mom, and he's like, I'll ask her, and then he goes and he's like, do you love me? And she says yes, and so then he can come back and just say, oh, she said yes.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty well played, and I, we've sort of skimmed over how many of these cool little moments there have been in the whole, like, last 2 chapters, like this whole infiltration. We've gotten to see Blake play the phrasing game,
Yeah, it's definitely been fun.
Yeah, it's not worth calling every single one of them to attention in this podcast because we'd be here all day. But they're so fun just going through it, and I feel like I can't imagine I'm going to be sick of this a million words in. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So something that escalates the tension even more is as he's trying to, get a lift home, Leanne, the little boy's cousin, notices that something's not right, and Blake says, "Shh, stay quiet, and I'll tell you later." And then kind of gets annoyed at himself for making this promise that seems like an arduous one to keep.
Yeah, I mean, not really. Like, he just has to take off his, like, when he doesn't have the glamour, he can just be like, "It was me," and then leave. I feel like that's all he's actually beholden to do. But I think what's more interesting is then during this car ride, Leanne's mum is constantly scolding her for fibbing and making promises. and like sort of setting this tone of like, Leanne she's roughly 6 as well, I think.
Yep.
And she's, her mum's trying to drill into her, good practitioner habits early on. And it's funny because Leanne seems to be just about as good as Blake, and they're saying she's not ready yet, and she's like a little kid. So it's just, It's sort of a neat point of comparison. Like as Blake is in between scolding himself for making promises, we're seeing like a 6-year-old keeping pace with him.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and it's one that you can't help but think like Blake is treating himself how these families treat their children to make them into practitioners, which is obviously not something that's set up to be viewed by us in a good light.
Yeah, well, and it also just shows that he's barely able to keep up with kids under 10. Like,
he's got the mental practitioner age of like a 6-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. He's just not rehearsed, and that really shows when he's under pressure, as we see in this chapter.
Yeah.
Also, there's an interesting line that comes out just before they hop in the car. Blake overhears some of the Bahams and Duchamps talking, and one of them sort of says that, he's won 2 points in a row, so another point in this sort of department, and he'll have earned 3, which is obviously, we've learned a lot about the rule of threes and how that makes it way more important. But like, I couldn't help but immediately think of Annabelle and Tromos from the Pages interlude, the woman and her familiar, because
the nightmare steed.
Yeah, because Tromos like traumatized Annabelle twice, but then she won the third time, and that meant she won overall, and now she's like lord of whatever city she's in. So to me, saying that Blake has 2 points. And if there's a third, it's more profound. I don't think that necessarily goes one way. Like, it's basically sort of saying whoever wins the next round wins the war. Like, it doesn't necessarily... It just means whoever wins the next one gets a huge benefit from the rule of threes, regardless of who it is.
Yeah, for sure. But, he has scored 2 points. And so I think the possibility is, he could actually score a third point, and then this will get really bad.
But it ups the tension for Blake as well. If he fucks up the third one, then Laird gets the huge advantage. and I mean, keeping in mind, he hasn't permanently stopped this ritual. There's nothing to stop them all meeting up in 12 hours and doing it again.
I think they even say they'll meet back up in a week and do it again or something.
Yeah, which is like, why even wait a week? Like, they could do it in a day, he's not... He hasn't stopped anything. He's delayed it at best.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he has bought himself some time. We'll see.
Yeah.
So Blake and Leanne and Leanne's mother get back to Leanne's house, and Blake kind of excuses himself to run to the bathroom and basically just starts tearing away his glamour, transforming back into his tired, miserable self.
Yeah, because of course he gets the glamour off, and he says he looks even worse than he did when he put it on. And when he put it on 2 chapters ago, he was already looking pretty bad. So like,
yeah, he was like fading out of reality. So
yeah, Blake needs a rest.
Yeah.
Although apparently he had 24 hours recently, and it didn't help that much. So I think what he needs more than anything else is like a domain or a familiar to pump him full of some good power juice.
Yeah.
But I also I think he's sort of skipping over the tenseness of this car ride. Where he starts changing back. Like, I think he says that, like, as he gets out of the car, like, one of his legs is 2 inches shorter than the other, and they're both 2 inches longer than they were when he got in. So he's got pants that are going, like, halfway down his shins. It's and Leanne just keeps asking him, like, "Are you all right?" And he's too afraid to talk because he thinks his voice might have changed back.
His voice will have changed back. Yeah,
it's hilarious.
And Blake knows that Leanne is a practitioner that outclasses him. So he's not out of the frying pan. He's gone from being surrounded by, 12 practitioners to one, but there's still enough to take him in his current state.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It doesn't feel like he's safe yet. He's, on the way there, but he's certainly still in the danger zone.
Yeah. So Blake has kind of transformed back into his faded body, to his battered self, and kind of has an opportunity to sneak out of the house. But before he does so, he kind of vindictively lets Dick Swizzle off the chain a bit to destroy the library that they have here. Yeah, Blake instructs Dick Swizzle not to hurt anybody, but to ruin things as much as he can.
Yeah. So first of all, he leaves dragging his exoskeleton old suit, it's more like a snakeskin glamour chunks with him, which
like hunks of skin.
I don't really get why he's doing that, but it's pretty badass, so I'll let it slide.
Maybe there's some way to re-melt that skin down back into glamour juice or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he learned his lesson from when he flushed the fairy ink down the drain last time, and that he knows so little, he may as well hoard stuff in case it's useful later. But yeah, going back to the dick swizzling, I don't really. I think I'm on Rose's side with this one. I don't really think this is necessary or worth it. I think the word vindictive that he used before is fairly on point. He makes an attempt at a case for why it won't be bad karma. He's like, oh well, they just tried to attack my house, so I'm attacking their house, but not them. And I mean, I don't know enough about karma to know if that'll hold up. But either way, this feels like one of those things that's kind of proving led right a little bit. These two were just kind of nice to him. I mean, obviously they thought he was someone else, but he's essentially. I see this as the equivalent of attacking civilians. I guess they weren't actively involved in much.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they were involved with the ritual. I think Blake. I get what you're saying, but I think from Blake's perspective, tonight has kind of been a failure, right? Yes, he delayed the ritual. He didn't really learn anything about it. He didn't really find anything out that he can use. All he did was buy himself a bit of time.
Yeah, it feels more like a move that's just designed to get a win, not a good win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think he just wants to say, oh, at least I did X. At least I had something.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. I wouldn't say he got no information. Presumably, after reading the tarot card thing, we went and read up on those. Presumably, he's going to do the same sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I would.
True.
But, and maybe he can do some reading up to try and decipher what this spell was. But you're right. He's definitely... It wasn't a solid win. He's still on the back foot.
Yeah. Dragging off his hunks of skin, he walks off into the night, I guess. And that's the end of Breach 3.4.
Yeah.
So Blake chides himself this chapter for making a few promises that he really doesn't need to make.
Yeah.
He kind of has done this a fair amount of times. In fact, Rose has kind of chided him for making promises that he doesn't keep before as well. And we wanted to kind of go back through some of the past chapters and take a look at some of these promises that Blake was making and seeing which ones he can or even has kept so far.
Yeah, and so we're keeping this in a spreadsheet. And so is the plan to try and keep this up to date?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll probably forget some, but if anyone calls out any fun promises that they think we should keep track of, we can pop them on this spreadsheet.
Yeah, sounds good.
I want to call out some of the ones that are my favourite so far.
Sure.
Ones that we can keep in mind. So I've only started tracking them from after Blake and Rose awakened. Obviously,
well, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, for example, they made a little deal with Patrick before they awakened, but I don't know. Do they need to hold themselves to it? Probably.
I mean,
will they? I don't know.
Patrick implied that if they didn't, there'd be trouble. I feel like that's one I would honor, but in general, just throw away statements and promises. I wouldn't really say need to be held to.
I guess if they break that promise with Patrick, the karma's not going to be their concern.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's start with some of the deals with a capital D that Blake has made. So he obviously made those 2 deals at the council meeting. He said, if you approach me and offer a ceasefire, I won't attack you with my demon. and if you tell me who killed Molly, I will protect you. I mean, I won't. Even if you attack me, I won't kill you. So far we haven't really seen anybody jump at those deals. Laird revealed who had killed Molly, but expressly didn't want to take the deal, which is fun.
Yeah, I still love that for just a fuck you move. It was great.
Yeah, it was such a good... Yeah. In terms of more official deals, the only real other official deal that Blake has made so far is the deals that he made with the Briar girl. So,
yep.
If she helps him against Laird, he will verify whether it's possible to move the house. If the Briar girl gives him some tools or knowledge he can use, he will give her a square of territory if and when he is able, which has already happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's promised to do that. And the third deal was if they both cancel the threats that they make against each other, basically. Which, again, I mean, there aren't many that they've already kept, but that one has been kept, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I guess you could always go back on something like that. She could tell Laird in the future.
Yeah.
And he could unrescind the threat.
Yeah.
I think my favorite that I'm really looking forward to seeing how well it's kept is his promise to keep June warm. I just want to see more of June again. I can't wait for Chekhov's hatchet to come back into things a bit more.
Yeah. There's some other obviously big deals as well. Blake and Rose swearing to help each other.
Yeah.
I think I like some of these small deals because I think they'll be kind of relevant. Like Blake promises to bind June's hatchet inside, which he doesn't do. That's a failed deal already. There are a few times where Blake promises that he'll take a break and eat some food. And I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. Right after binding Leonard, he says, I'll eat a full meal in just a few minutes. And that just doesn't. They just go off to hang out with Briar Girl instead, so that's fun. And obviously there's, if you keep it a secret, I'll show you later, said to Leanne in this very chapter. Those are the main kind of promises that we've seen Blake make. I'm interested to see which of these he keeps. Like, keeping June warm, I think, is a great one to keep an eye on, because he is trying to do that, but that's like a forever promise, right?
Well, yeah, until he uses her all up, essentially.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Anyway, just a fun little look at some of the promises that have been made. But that's going to bring us to the end of our discussion of Breach 3.4. Hey, if you want to follow us and get notified when our next episode comes out, you should check out our Twitter, which is MediaMD Podcast, at MediaMD Podcast. Twitter.
Also all of our episodes and information on the shows available on our website, doofmedia.com.
Also on doofmedia.com, you can check out some other great shows, like We've Got Ward. Ward is going through some really intense things at the moment, and I'm always, every time I read a new chapter of Ward, I'm very excited to hear how Scott and Matt will talk about it.
Yeah, I always learn stuff that I missed on my read-throughs for sure, and so I think that's, that should have just started Arc 12 as of this episode coming out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Elliot, that we reread the Pact chapters a few times, and so now I feel like I'm getting a bit of the sense of how I capture how I catch some of these things now when I reread it. But I don't do that in Ward. I'm too excited. I just read it and then I miss so many things. So yeah, check out We've Got Ward. It's a great show, and you can see it on doofmedia.com.
Yeah. Speaking of Doof, we've also got the Patreon, which is patreon.com/doofmedia. And that, you get a ton of stuff if you start donating to us there, like access to the Doof Cord, which is the Doof Discord server. But really, the main motivation you should need to do it is you're just going to help us continue to make cool shows, whether that's this show or We've Got Ward or any of the other great shows on the Doof Network. We're able to do this because people like it and demonstrate their appreciation for it monetarily. That's right.
So check out the Doof Media Patreon if you get a chance. While you're on Patreon, you should also check out Wildbow's Patreon, because he is responsible for making these stories. Without him, we wouldn't have done this podcast. So definitely check out patreon.com/wildbow.
And so I guess the only other way that we haven't mentioned that you could get in touch with us is in the show notes under this episode. there will be a link to a discussion thread on Reddit where you can chat with everyone about the chapter and, whatever else is going on in the world of Pact.
Yep. Now, when we have these bonus chapters like this one, those discussion threads don't usually stay up for very long before it's time for us to record another episode, but you'll have a few days before Breach 3.5 comes out. That will be out on the 25th of February. So in the meantime, jump on into the description of this episode and chat to us over on Reddit.
Yeah. Till then, we'll see you on Monday.
Bye.